I'm Lorraine Fisher, Education Officer for Early Learning and Childcare and North Lanarkshire's Early Years Champion, and I'm delighted to be welcoming you to the second Investing in Nurturing Lives and Communities conference. I'd like to extend a special welcome to all of our invited speakers today, and I can't believe that it was about a year ago that we launched our Nurture strategy in the Glow Centre in Motherwell, and we've had some journey in that year since and made a lot of progress in developing our nurturing approaches. Our aim for this conference is that all stakeholders will continue to build on their developing knowledge and understanding of practice in nurturing lives and communities and begin to understand how to put this into practice. Many of you will already be aware that attachment is the overarching theme of the Early Years Collaborative. And in order to embed it in our multi-agency work, it was decided to offer Solihull training to all professionals working with children and families in North Lanarkshire, as we know how essential it is for child's development that strong attachments and positive relationships are developed from birth. At this point, I always think about the quote from Frederick Douglass, "Better to build strong children than repair broken men." And I think that's what we're trying to achieve for all our children, a really positive start, so that they then go on to improve their life chances, their families, and indeed societies ultimately. To date, we've trained 1,300 professionals on a multi-agency basis, and the multi-agency approach has been one of the key strengths of this training. And now, as part of the Scottish Attainment Challenge, we're rolling out whole school Solihull training across our primary schools, and this is already having a very positive impact on staff's approach to building relationships with parents and carers. I cannot emphasise enough how pleased I am to be introducing you to two chief executives this morning, so I could say two for the price of one. I'm sure that you'll agree that this is a very strong endorsement from our community planning partnership, that they value and support this collaborative approach to developing a nurturing ethos in North Lanarkshire. We really appreciate that they've both taken the time out of their busy schedules to be with us today. So I'll now outline the programme for this morning. I'm delighted to introduce to you Paul Jukes, our new Chief Executive in North Lanarkshire Council, who already has many years of experience of working in the Council at a senior level, and then Callum Campbell, who has been Chief Executive of North NHS Lanarkshire for over a year now and has extensive experience of working at a senior level in the NHS. And they're going to set the scene for the conference. Callum will be followed by Alison MacDonald, who's our Principal Educational Psychologist. And Alison will go on to explain our operational definition of attachment. Alison's always had a very keen interest in this area throughout her career, and we're really pleased that she can share her knowledge and expertise with us this morning. So I'm now going to hand you over to Paul Jukes, our Chief Executive.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Good. I have to say, I started last night looking at some of the representation at the conference today and some of the information I had been given. And I had a particular speech prepared for me, in all honesty, and I decided I wouldn't use it on the basis of there's so many professionals in the room, and I didn't want to run the risk of using nouns, verbs and adjectives and getting them the wrong way around, and you end up saying, what's he talking about? So I decided not to do that, and I decided just to talk on a couple of slides that were put together early this morning about how I think our approach, our collaborative working needs to be, and where we are in terms of particularly some of the challenges we have within our communities, and indeed the financial challenges we're facing, but nevertheless we still need to deliver. So on that basis, I did look at some of the detail, and I thought, perspectives and opinions, everybody has perspectives and opinions on how things should be. And certainly I'm no different, and it took me back a few years, because I do appreciate, depending on where you are in health and what your job is, and where you are in the council and what your job is, and where you are in police and fire and the voluntary sector and so on, we all have different opinions and perspectives on what we should actually be doing. And it took me back to, you've all gathered by now, that I'm from a small fishing village on the side of the River Tyne called Newcastle. So I went back to my years. I was in Newcastle in the 70s, walking down a street called Northumberland Street, which is pretty similar to Sauchiehall Street in Glasgow. And I was going into a record shop, and I had my pony. I was a young guy then. Yeah. I was thinking, I had my ponytail, my leather jacket, my crash helmet off my motorbike, and me jeans, me Holy jeans. And back in Newcastle, Holy jeans weren't a fashion, they were just a way of life back then. So went into this record shop, and the music was blaring in Northumberland Street. And I'm walking up to the guy, and I used to follow a singer, a folk singer at the time called Harvey Andrews. I think he's probably still about, actually. And as I was walking up, the guy behind the counter, it wasn't the polite of, what can I do for you? How can I help you, sir? It was, what do you want, kidder? And as I'm walking up to him, I said to him, I'm looking for an LP. LP, notice, no. I'm looking for an LP from by Harvey Andrews called What's Your Opinion? Back to opinions and perspectives. He only heard What's Your Opinion because of the music. And as I walked up to him, he stepped from behind the counter, and he looked me up and down, and he went, well, to be frank, son, you could do with a haircut, you could do with a shave, and your backside's falling out the bottom of them pants. Formed his opinion on what he's seen. I think that's my point. And there are a lot of professional opinions in the room. My view is, we have professional opinions, and we have to go about our job, but nevertheless, we need to be professional and not professionally precious, which is why I put a couple of slides together. My apologies given the makeup of the room. I know before you tell me there are no women in the boat. I know that, right? The point of that slide is just everybody in the room and all our partners and a lot of the agencies are actually working very, very hard, but not necessarily in the same direction. So we perhaps don't make as much progress as we could make. And I am conscious this is the second conference, and I am privileged to be asked to speak to you this morning. But I just want to give you my view as a new chief executive into the council. This is my observation about where we are, both in the council and out with. Everybody's working very, very hard, but not necessarily all pulling in the same direction at the same time. You can use whatever analogy you like. We can all be on the football park, but we're not kicking in the same direction, and so on and so forth. But it was just to make the point that we need to have a shared vision, and I am conscious that's what it's about. It's about getting the shared vision. It's about collective responsibility. It's about making sure that change is everybody's responsibility in driving things forward. So without the shared vision, we don't have any real clear objectives because we have individual perspectives, individual opinions, but not necessarily an overall holistic objective. And therefore, we have direction, unclear communication, and we become difficult in terms of measuring success. And we're all measured these days on success, and I'm sure we're all having never-ending bound of performance indicators, legislative and regulatory requirements that we have to meet. And, are we really measuring success when we're actually doing that? So we need to be able to clear on how we're measuring success. I do have an issue about we don't need more leaders. Every time we do something, it seems to be, let's put a new structure in place, let's change this, let's put a team leader in there, let's put a team lead. I think it's more leadership as opposed to leaders. And I don't think the leadership shouldn't necessarily be down to the chief executives of organisations. It should be every tier. Everywhere has to have management, but everywhere has to have leadership. So it's just making that point. And this is a slide I put together actually for my interview for this job, the one I have now. Making the point about we need to get our focus right in our communities. And I think obviously part of the big aspect you're getting, and I like the quote that you read out, Lorraine, earlier on about developing young people rather than broken adults, rather than dealing with broken adults. So the early years collaborative, obviously, significant amount of work. I do have an issue, I'm sure there's probably some social work staff in the room. I do have an issue with GIFIC about getting it right for every child. I'm not really sure that hits it on. We need to be about getting it right for every community, because if we get it right for every child, but we miss this bit, then we're back to square one again. So I think there is a program in there. And I am conscious in terms of what we do, and certainly what we do in the local authority. People need us at different stages in their life, at different levels of intervention. And it's about tailoring them levels of intervention and taking things forward. And not so much at this point, as long as the grass is cut, the roads are maintained, the street lights work and so on. And people are working, they don't need you that much unless they've got other demands. And then the council and the health service in many ways gets involved again towards the end. That's too simple an explanation, but just making the point that major resources at the start, major resources at the end, and there's probably an issue of focusing what we actually do. Which takes us probably in many ways to the edge of a comfort zone, because we often find, and certainly in some of the work I've been doing lately, that when it gets to staff being reduced, resources being reduced, performance indicators remaining, more regulation coming in, more legislation coming in, we can actually contract quite easily back into our professions and not be professional, but more be professionally precious, because we now start to ring fence what we've got and circle the wagons and so on. I think this is the very time, and I would be keen to hear your view throughout the day, this is the very time when we need to get to the edge of the comfort zone and have more faith and take a leap of faith and jump. And I say that to you as a young man back in the 70s. I was in the 4th Battalion of the Parachute Regiment, and one of the things when you got to do your parachute jumps was used to teach you, trust your equipment, because nobody wants to go. Nobody's frightened of heights. Everybody's frightened of falling and dying. That's what they're frightened of. They're not actually frightened of the height, if you think about it. And he said, trust your equipment. You need to trust your equipment. And when you're in an aeroplane, in a military aeroplane, and you've got 70 pounds worth of pack, a rifle, 2 parachutes, one on your back, you can't really turn. You haven't got much maneuverability. And you're relying on the guy behind you, checking everything with you's okay, and you're checking the guy in front of you before you actually go. My point there is we needed to trust each other. We needed to check and we needed to trust each other. And I think that's where we are now as part of the public sector PLC. We actually need to have faith and trust that the other part of the organisation, although we're maybe not directly responsible for it, we don't have any managerial control over it, but we've set an objective, we've set a vision, and the other part of the organisation will deliver. So I think the bit about the parachute regiment and trust your equipment, I'm just translating that into public sector PLC. We need to trust each other, get to the edge of our comfort zone, and take that leap of faith. Thank you for listening to my inane dribble. I appreciate that. I picked that word up from Billy Connolly once when I was watching him when he was talking, actually on this stage, talking about his dribble, but he went on for a couple of hours and he was quite funny, so I do appreciate that. And I'll hand over to Callum, who's actually, the reference was made to 2 executives for the price of 1. Callum's been faithful. I'm the free one. Thanks very much.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm going to be very brief. I'm not going to sit and talk for long. Just to introduce myself, first of all, I'm Callum Campbell. I'm Chief Executive of NHS Lanarkshire. I was trying to think how I would introduce myself, but Paul sort of solved the problem when he talked about the parachute regiment. I was trying to think of the connection with sort of nurturing and rearing. My background was I was a health visitor, so they're quite markedly different. I was a health visitor in Port Glasgow in Greenock, and I suppose part of the reason I wanted to be here today is I've never lost sight of the importance, if you get it right at the very start, the difference it can make for kids, especially in sort of deprived communities. I suppose the first place I would want to start is around emotional well-being, and I think we've all got a responsibility around that, the importance of the relationships with parents and the early development of kids can't be understated. And I think everybody in this room, and I'll come on to my role as a Chief Executive later on, everybody in this room has got a key role to play in supporting parents. It can be a really challenging place to be as a parent or a caregiver, but if we can do that and support them to make a difference, it'll be tremendous. There are lots of things that get in the way. I remember when I was a health visitor, the issues that I've put up on the screen there were very, very common. Port Glasgow and Greenock were some of the most deprived communities in the west of Scotland at that point. And there's lots of things going on in Lanarkshire. They've given me a long list. I won't read them all out, but you've got the Lanarkshire Parenting Support Strategy, the Maternity Quality Improvement Collaborative, the Early Years Collaborative, the NHS Lanarkshire Children and Young People's Health Plan, the Universal Pathway for Health Visiting. There's lots and lots of things going on. And I don't think it's just a matter of adding more in, but it's a question of how do we pull it all together. And really, those things will make the biggest difference. I was quite pleased when I was preparing for this that we're very clear. As a manager, I sometimes think, what's the vision, what's the aim? And it was great when I tried to do this. The aim was very, very clear. And I would just ask people to just take a few seconds and make sure you read it. Paul's example, the boat, was an ideal example. If you're not clear about what you're trying to do, where you're trying to go, you never actually get there. So be very clear of the aim is crucial. The definition of nurture. I've deliberately taken this as from the Oxford Dictionary. And I believe 2016 is the year of the dad. I don't feel as if I've been that spoiled so far this year. Feel free at any point to start spoiling me. But when I was looking at this, I was trying to think, I've got 3 boys, and they're very, very easy to say. But those that are in the room that are parents, it is really quite hard to do at times. I always remember the phrase that only a parent could love them. And I sometimes think as carers, as professionals, we have a responsibility to support them because we all go through that stage. I was certainly having one of those last night. I think the other point I would like to make, though, as Chief Executive, and I'm happy for any of my own staff to quote this back to me, I accept it's my responsibility to support my staff to make sure they're in a position to support parents and caregivers. If we don't really commit to it, it's back to the aim, we really won't make the difference. Paul touched earlier on about GIRFEC. I think it's got some strengths, it's got some weaknesses, but we have invested heavily in it. We have a very clear vision in Lanarkshire, and we have made a commitment. I think it was said right at the start, we've made a commitment to train all our early years staff in the Solihull approach. And I suppose the last slide I'm going to come back with a challenge. We really need to identify who's not yet been trained. We've trained 1,300. There must be quite a few to go. So we really make sure we sort of push each other. I'm a great person for team sports. And part of a team sport is if somebody's not pulling their weight, don't be shy about letting them know. Everybody that works with me knows that I'm pretty direct at times, so don't be shy. Until I was preparing for this, I wasn't aware that we'd launched this last year about nurturing lives in North Lanarkshire. And the more I looked at it, the more I learned about it, the more excited about it I got, because it's just the right thing to do. It's nice to nurture, it's nice to grow, it's nice to develop things. And I suppose for me, this is the second conference, and I would like to ask you all to give some thought to that, because there's nothing worse than working really, really hard and never be given the chance to celebrate success, to tell people of the successes you've had. Reflect upon your failures. They're not failures, they're just learning opportunities. But if you don't share them, other people will make the same mistakes. But equally, listen to others. You'll learn a lot from others. So I don't really want to say anything more other than to leave you with a challenge. It's been great being here this morning. Thank you. And I want you to know there is 100% commitment from myself and NHS Lanarkshire for this. But please don't make the mistake of coming here today and say, it was quite a nice day. And I'm quite happy to be challenged myself later on, or at any point from anybody in the room. The challenge I want to leave you with is, what are you going to change individually or collectively in your team as the result of this? Because if we don't turn it into action, we really won't make a difference. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for taking the time to listen to me. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you.